In this presentation, I will analyze the Liebestod from Wagner's opera Tristan und Isolde. But first, some background. This opera represents an important moment in the history of European art music. Historically, you could basically sum up the tonal system as prolongations of the 1-5-1 progression. But in this opera, that is clearly being subverted because we never get a strong 5-1 resolution. It is always being interrupted in some way. As we will see, even in the climactic end of the piece, where we expect to finally have a release of harmonic tension, we end up with a deceptive resolution, weakening the movement back to tonic. The heightened use of chromaticism, the emphasis on voice leading over standard harmonic progressions, and the insistence on not resolving harmonic tension makes this an important milestone in the movement away from tonality. When I began analyzing the Liebestod, the most striking thing I realized is just how frequently it modulates. The key area changes almost every measure to every other measure. Take, for example, the opening two measures of the Liebestod. We begin in A-flat major and modulate in the second measure to E-flat minor by using C-flat major as a pivot chord. This pace of modulation continues through much of the piece, with modulations becoming less frequent as we move to the big arrival points. I should note that there is a fair amount of ambiguity with the harmonic analysis, since Wagner is intentionally subverting strong cadences, causing a degree of guesswork in determining key areas. The frequent modulations have a disorienting effect, since we can never be sure where we are going harmonically. The sense of forward momentum and lack of harmonic resolution is further emphasized by the fact that in this aria, if you can call it an aria, it is through composed. The opening three measures provide an example of how five chords are never strongly resolved. In the first measure, we end with the dominant of A flat, but instead of resolving back to A flat, we move somewhere else. This same pattern repeats itself in the following measures, with five never resolving to one. For example, we have A flat major moving to its dominant E flat 7. If we were following conventional harmonic practices, we would probably resolve back to A flat. But instead, Wagner does something a lot more interesting. Not only does he use a deceptive resolution, he changes key areas, creating a strong sense of forward momentum. The strange harmonic motion of this piece can partially be explained by the smoothness of voice leading taking priority over conventional harmonic progressions, which is a common feature of late Romantic music. Despite the lack of harmonic resolution and strong formal divisions, Wagner is able to maintain coherence through the use of similar melodic material, including the use of leitmotifs, and the use of bass movements to glue the melodic and harmonic material together into sections. An example of this is the use of descending bass lines. Take, for example, in measures 34 through 43, we get a long descending chromatic bass line, which eventually lands on a structurally important 5-7 chord, all of which sets up the first climactic moment. Here is an example of the descending bass line. The first climactic moment is anticlimactic in a sense. Despite the forward momentum, full release of the voice, and large release of sound from the orchestra, making this feel very much like an arrival point, the moment we have been waiting 4 hours to get to, we still do not get a solid resolution of the 5-7 chord. Instead, it resolves deceptively to the 4 chord. Here is an example. If we were to release harmonic tension, we would resolve dominant to tonic. But instead, this is what we get. Immediately after the first arrival point, tension begins building again. Also with the descending baseline pushing towards an arrival point. This time forward momentum is exaggerated further by hammering home the dominant chords from measures 55 to 60. And here is an example of the 5/7 chords being used repeatedly to build up tension. Etc. Unlike the first arrival point, the second arrival point occurs on the downbeat, with full orchestra, full release of the voice. And we still do not get a strong resolution of the dominant, once again resolving deceptively to the 4 before arriving at 1. So here's the example. We're standing on the dominant, building the harmonic tension. Until we finally get the big release, which isn't actually a true release harmonically. This tension is still there, even at the moment where we believe it should finally resolve. 4-1. The piece ends by slowly calming down. We get a nice restatement of the Tristan chord, which is that French augmented 6 chord, which doesn't resolve necessarily like it's supposed to. And we finally end calmly on the tonic. To end the presentation, I will leave you with a recording of the Liebestod performed by Birgit Nilsson, who is one of my favorite opera singers, and one of the best singers for Wagner in my opinion. Unfortunately, I'm unable to get the video to work in the presentation, so I've provided a link below in the description box. Thank you for listening.